Hello and welcome everyone to the Motility Cabin Fever webinar series. My name is Chris Hoffreiter, and today we're going to be talking about special order parts processes in the software. So we're going to be getting started with the meeting in just a few minutes, but I do see that we have some participants in the meeting, attendees who have registered, but we're still waiting on quite a number of people. So we're going to be getting started probably about 7 minutes. I usually get started about 5 minutes after the hour. But we are live right now, and this is going to be recorded for viewing later on. So we're going to be sending an email out with a link to anyone who registered for the webinar but was unable to attend. If you're in the meeting right now, I believe the process that we're going to put in place is if you want a copy of this webinar, you'll need to send an email to support to request it. But we are going to be sending copies of the webinar to anyone who failed to show up to the meeting or who were not attentive for one reason or the other. So if we see that you were away from your computer during the webinar, we can actually see that, and we'll go ahead and shoot an email to you with a copy of the webinar. So if you are able to hear me, and I see there's a couple of people, names I recognize, just go ahead and raise your hand in the meeting. There's a little hand icon that you can click on to raise your hand. Okay, good. See, there's a few people who are able to hear, so I know my audio is working. So again, bear with us. We're going to be getting started in probably about 5 minutes now. Yeah, just hang tight for about 5 minutes. We'll be getting started. Okay, see, we have a few more participants who have joined the webinar. Welcome. Everyone who's in now is officially on time to the webinar. So congratulations. I will not be congratulating anyone else for being on time because they will have been arriving a little bit late, but we're not going to get started until about 5 minutes after the hour. So welcome everyone. Just hang tight with us, and we're going to be getting started with the content at about 1:05 on my clock. Okay, so you know what? I'm not sure if anyone's joined. This looks like the same number of people who were on time. I think we may have had one additional person join since I started the meeting here. So welcome. My name is Chris Hoffreiter, and I'm professional services consultant with Motility Software. And today we're going to be talking about the special order process within parts and service. We're going to talk about how to do special order parts from a parts invoice, how to special order parts from a service invoice, and also how those orders go through on the order list. Then we'll talk about how those special orders come back in on a receiving ticket and how you can notify the customer to come pick up their special order parts that they have ordered. So we're going to go ahead and jump into the content of the meeting. And just to gently restate something that I mentioned earlier, we are going to be sending out emails with recordings of this meeting to anyone who had to leave the meeting halfway through. So if you'd like a copy of this training and you did watch it all the way through, you will have to email us at support in Motility Software, and we can go ahead and send you the link of this webinar content so you can watch the video later on or let other people watch the video. Okay, so to get started, you should be able to see my screen now. It looks like the Motility demo screen. And to get started, we're going to talk about special orders and how they flow through the software. The first thing that's unique about a special order is that we have to know the customer's name and information in order to place a special order. So what that means is on the parts section on the left, I would click 102 New Invoice. I would not want to click Point of Sale because we're going to be ordering these parts. So 102 New Invoice to do a special order. So then the next thing that you'll need to do is get the customer's information at the top section. Of course, we can do that by searching by last name. And that's going to search the database of existing customers. If this is a new customer you're doing a special order for, you can click the Add Modify Entity button to go ahead and add a new customer to the system. But for right now, we'll just go ahead and load a customer that already exists. Then their information will populate in this top section. And we're going to always start a special order by putting in the part number that we are going to be special ordering. And one thing that's kind of nice about our software, we do integrate for ordering with, we integrate with NTP, Mayer, and Arrow for electronic ordering. But we can also integrate with any supplier's price books. So if your part supplier can supply you the price book, we can upload that to the system and make your life a little bit easier. So right now I've added a new part to inventory. As you can see, I have to type in the description. And I'll also need to put in my retail price and my replacement cost. And I will also have to pick a default supplier for that part as well. If we have a price file in the system or a price book in the system, then all of that information will be filled out for you automatically. So I'm going to save this part and exit it. And what we have here is we have a quantity of 1 sold to the customer and a quantity relieved of 0. So I can update the sold quantity to however many parts this customer is going to be ordering from us. And at this point, you can take a deposit from the customer, but generally, we definitely want to keep an open invoice the whole time that you have parts on special order. So in other words, I don't want to click the cash out button. What I want to do is click the deposit button. And this allows you to take prepayment for your special order. Oh yeah, before I forget, let me cancel out of this deposit. You probably are also going to be charging your customer for freight. So make sure to drop down to the next line and add your freight part number. In my system, it's FR. And it may ask you to type in your part cost. and your parts price. So if I'm going to charge this customer $14 for freight, I'll type in 14, hit OK, and then we have a quantity sold of 1 for the freight for $14. So my total in red is what the customer owes. I'll click the deposit button and go ahead and type in that amount, $92.63. And then we can go ahead and click the cash out button to take payment from this customer for the special order. So depending on your dealership's process and your business, your actual business process that you train people on, you may or may not require that you take the full payment up front. It may be that the customer has to come back in once the parts are delivered before they pay. That's fine too. But you know, most dealerships, they do require prepayment for special order parts, just to ensure that customer definitely comes back in and picks up their parts. They've prepaid for it. But you also may take a 10% down or something like that. Either way is pretty much fine, but the cash out process will be the same. I'll click the pay type. We'll say MasterCard and hit OK, and then print receipt. So now I have a deposit on an open invoice for a special order. The next thing I want to do is change the status, the external status of the invoice. Here, let me close out of these printouts. The status needs to be waiting for parts. So that way I know that this is a special order parts request. Okay, so that says waiting for parts. The next thing I want to do is actually order the parts. So to do that, I'm going to click the order parts button at the bottom, order parts. And as you can see, it's going to identify that there are 2 parts that need to be ordered by window seal part number. We need 2 of them. So I'm presented with an option at this point. You have the option to place directly on order, or you can place on the order list. The difference here is if you're going to actually call the supplier right now and order this part, you'd want to click place directly on order. But if it's a supplier that gives you a bulk shipping discount, like NTP does this, you may be waiting until the end of the day to call NTP and place one order with all the parts that you need. So if that's the case, I would click place on order list. And then when I'm ready to call NTP, I can generate a PO at that point. I'm going to go ahead and click place on order list and show you what that looks like. The part that was ordered will change to this light blue color. And if you look at the parts key down at the bottom, it tells you that that is on the order list in the parts key. So this allows me to track that. And if I click on that part number at the top, then it'll tell me that my total on hand is 0. Total on order is 0 because we haven't ordered it yet. It's on the order list. But total allocated is 2 because we've sold 2 but relieved 0. And we change the status to waiting for parts. So we're all done at this point. I can just click the X button at the top, or I can click exit at the bottom. And what you'll see is in the parts invoicing list, we have a waiting for parts purchase order. So now I'm going to click on the order list, which is 201 order list. And I just want to point out that there is this part number in the order list. The quantity is 2. We have our default supplier of NTP. We see our price and our cost. And then if I look in the comments line, it is going to tell me that it's Thomas Anderson's part. So it puts the customer's name over here in the comments. That's how you know it's a special order part, is that their information is in the comments there. So some other things that this does show, it tells me who added it to the order list. So in this case, it's me. And that way you know if some part pops up on the order list, you know who actually put it on there. Okay. So we're going to close out of this order list. I don't want to save my changes. So the next part of this webinar is we're going to talk about how special order parts come from the service department. And once we talk about that, we're then going to go into placing the orders and receiving them. All right, so right now we're going to click on 400 invoicing, which these are your service invoices in the system. And what I'm going to do is go ahead and open up one of these. And in this case, we have a retail job where we have a part number on here. What I'm going to do is drop down to the bottom. As you can see, it's just like a parts invoice at the bottom here. It's just that the parts section is a little smaller. So I'm going to click on that part number field, and we're going to do the same thing as before. We can go ahead and put our part number in, hit enter. Yes, we want to add it. Okay. And of course, if we have a price book on file, it's going to fill out the description for you automatically. It will also fill out your retail price and your replacement cost. And of course, we'll know who the default supplier is as well. So all of that needs to be filled out before I can click the Save button on this part, and then I'll hit Exit. So now we have our part down here. We have sold 1, relieved 0. At this point, the process for ordering the part is pretty much the same. I'm going to click the Order Parts button at the bottom. As you can see, it's going to find my vent hood part, quantity of 1, and I'm going to click Place on Order List, since we're going to be doing a bulk order later on. So here we have our special order part. Everything else is pretty much the same. We have our total on hand of 0, total on order of 0. It's in blue, which means it's on the order list, and we have 1 allocated to this invoice. All right, so the next thing that might happen is I might change the status of the service invoice to this waiting for parts status. So this tells me that we have a special order in the service department. We're waiting for those parts to be delivered, and it changes the color to green. The benefit of this is if I'm looking at my open work order list, I can see that the green work orders are the ones that are waiting for a special order to be placed. Okay, all right, sounds good. So moving on, we're going to click on order list on the left. That's 201 order list. And as you can see, there are now 2 part numbers on the order list. These are the 2 that I added. The first one has a quantity of 2. The second one has a quantity of 1. We have our retail prices, our replacement costs, and of course the comments. Each one says the name of the customer in the comments who actually placed the special order. So in this case, we have a service document. In the first case, we had a parts document. All that information is here in the comments, and you can kind of expand that out if you need to read more of it. Now, on the order list, this is where you're actually going to be calling the supplier and placing the order. So what I want to do is just uncheck any of the parts on the order list that I'm not going to be ordering right now. I only want to order the 2 parts that I know I'm ordering today. The next thing I want to do is make sure that the supplier is correct. If I'm going to be ordering from NTP, I need to make sure that NTP is my supplier. So that's it. Now I want to go to the bottom of the order list and just click Create POs. It's going to then identify that we have NTP is the only supplier that is selected to order. So if you see multiple suppliers at this stage, you want to make sure that you cancel and go back and just fix your suppliers to make sure that you're only going to be creating a PO for the 1 supplier that you are actually contacting right now. If there are multiple suppliers, it will create multiple POs at this stage. So just be aware of that. You only want to see the 1 in here. So select the suppliers you want to order from. We'll select NTP and then hit OK. And we have an alert on NTP here. Okay. So this is a PO. What I can do at this point is pick up the phone and call the supplier to go ahead and place the order. If you have electronic ordering integration with Motility software turned on, then we can actually place this order electronically. So that's only going to work for NTP, Mayer Distributing, and Arrow Distributing. Those 3 companies have electronic order integration with Motility. Any other supplier, you can still do the same process for special order, but you're just going to have to probably go online to that supplier's website and place the order. The benefit is, if we look at the top, we have a purchase order number. 182502 is my PO number. So when the supplier asks you for your PO number, you can fill that information in, and then this PO is now going to be tracked in their system as well. Okay, so I do want to double check my quantity, make sure that the retail price is accurate, but for the most part, I can just click order now at this stage, which is going to place it on order. So I get a NTP notification here. This is going to allow me to place my order electronically with NTP. If I hit no, that can just be a standard Infinity order. And that's it. So it's going to print out that PO for your records. And then if I go back to the order list, as you can see, those parts have disappeared from the order list because I created a PO for them. The only two parts that remain are the parts that were in the order list originally. And let me just close out of here. I just want to show you what happens on your parts invoice. So right here is my parts invoice. It says waiting for parts, as you can see. And if I open it up and I click on that part and we look at the bottom, now we can see my total on hand is still 0, but total on order is 2, and my total allocated is 2. So what this tells me is, if I'm looking at this screen, I can see that that order has actually been placed with the supplier. If I want to get more information about it, I can click the info button to the right-hand side of that part. Info button will again show you what's allocated at the top, what's on order right now. And to get more detail, I can click the history button at the bottom. The history button now shows me the order. It shows me the PO number and the supplier. And if I want, I can even click the open button here to get back to the PO so that I can see the details of that of the part on there. Okay, so there's your PO number, there's the supplier information. So I'm going to close out of history, exit the master inventory, and we got there by clicking the info button. So it's pretty easy to do that research right from the work order or the parts invoice. Okay, so we talked about order list, we talked about parts invoices, we talked about service invoices, special orders. Now we're going to move on to receiving a special order. So we're going to click 300 receiving, and I'm going to start by clicking new receiving ticket. When I click new receiving ticket, it opens up the receiver. If I look at my POs in the system, I can click this drop-down arrow for PO number. And as you can see, I have two different POs in the system. The one that I'm really concerned with is the one that I ordered today. So if I know the PO number, and if you supplied it to the supplier, they're probably going to tell you your PO number, so you can pick it from this list. It gives you the date ordered, that's today's date, so I'm going to click on that. And then we'll click the import button just to the right of PO number. So the import button, what it does is it puts NTP at the top of the receiving ticket, and it also loads up all the parts that were on the PO. So on a receiving ticket, what I would do is make sure that I type in the entity reference number. This is going to be the invoice number from the supplier. And then I'm going to come down to my quantity received and type in the number of parts that were actually delivered. So if we got everything that they said they were delivering, we can click 2 for the first part, 1 for the second part. Now at this point, I can come in and fix the cost and fix the list price of the parts if it's changed between when it was ordered and when it was received. And another very important thing is to add the freight to this invoice. So if NTP is charging you for freight, you can come down here to the new part line and put in your FR part number, which will allow you to receive one freight part, and you can put in the cost of your freight, which in this case is $15. So I can put in 15 here. Now, freight is not actually a part in inventory. It's a special kind of part in its own category. So if we look at the bottom, you can see we have a parts total and a freight total. And so this is the correct way to receive a special order part. And if we look at the comments here, I can see my special order parts. The comments are the same as they were on the PO and on the order list. It tells me the parts document, tells me the customer's name. So that's important to be able to track that special order. Other than that, the receiving process is just about the same as it would be for any other type of order. So I'm going to come down to the bottom and click Receive Now. I get a warning about bin locations. It says, do you want to receive the entire ticket at this time? I'll hit yes. And do you want to print barcode labels? I'll hit no here. And it'll actually print out a receiving ticket for your records as well. Okay, so now that I've done that, the receiving ticket has been received. If I go back to my parts invoicing list, okay, so if we go back to our service invoicing list, as you can see, our work order has actually changed status to special order received. So when we first ordered this part, we changed the status to the green waiting for part status. But once that special order ticket has been received, it's going to change that to say special order received. I mean, the reason for that is so that you can call the customer and have them come back and pick up their parts. And if I look at the part, you can see it's actually in a very light blue, which according to the key down here means that the part has been received. And if I click on it, as you can see, my total on hand now is a +1, but my total allocated is still a 1. When the customer does come back in and you're able to deliver the parts, or when the technician installs the parts on the customer's unit, you'll want to make sure that you come in here and relieve that part from inventory. And as you can see, now my total on hand is 0, allocations are 0. We're all set on this service work order. So at this point, you can continue working on the unit. Eventually, you'll cash this out and get payment from the customer. So that takes care of the service side of things. And if I go back to my 100 invoicing and parts, my parts work order, my parts will also change status to received. So my windowsill, as you can see, has 2 on hand, +2 on hand, with 2 allocated. So what I want to do is make sure that I relieve those parts, right? I also want to relieve the freight part that I charge this customer for freight. They don't owe us anything, but I still have to click the cash out button when the customer comes in to pick up their parts. So we're going to go ahead and cash out this customer. It says change returned is $0. There's nothing else that they need to pay because we have a deposit already. And all I have to do is print a receipt for the customer to hand to them with their parts. And that takes care of it. All right, so that was the entire special order parts process. I hope that everyone was able to learn something from that. I don't see that any questions have been posted in the meeting. So let me double check and see what we have here. Well, I do have a question. Why does the system allow you to relieve parts on a PO that is not ordered and update the unordered quantity partially fulfilled and fulfilled? Receive parts on a PO that is not ordered and update the ordered PO to partially fulfilled. So it's a little bit confusing. Hey, that's Dominus, Chris Dominus. So on the receiving ticket, it's only going to show you parts that are in an, it's only going to show you POs that are in an ordered status. It won't show you those that haven't yet been ordered. So you generally shouldn't be an issue with that, but definitely something to pay attention to. I do have a question here about general POs. And for the most part, we're not going to talk about general POs. We're pretty much just focusing on the special order parts process. So if you have questions about general POs, you can send an email to training, maybe set up a training session for that, and we can get your questions answered. And Chris, it sounds like you might be talking about a bug that you found with the system. It shouldn't be doing what you're saying that it's doing. Sounds like it might be a bug, so I would send that up to our support, and we can get that looked at for you. But in general, what I've shown you here today is going to be the process for special order parts. If you do have any other follow-up questions, feel free to send them over to support@motilitysoftware.com, and we'll get those answered for you. And once again, if you've been attentive for the entire webinar, but you would like a copy of the video, you can also email support and request a copy of that, and we'll shoot that link back to you. Okay, all right, so thanks everybody for participating in this, and to anyone who arrived late in the meeting, we'll definitely send you a copy of that and email as well, so you can catch the beginning of it. I hope everyone has a great rest of the day, and thanks for your attentiveness. Have a good one.